It was supposed to be a standard Thursday night on national television. Tucker Carlson's primetime special, The Real America, had teased a surprise guest all week, fueling speculation across conservative and liberal media. But no one expected the guest to be Denzel Washington. The stage was slick, modern, and predictably branded with stars and stripes motifs. Carlson stood confidently beneath spotlights, blue tie crisp, papers in hand. His tone was jovial, mocking at times, as he welcomed viewers to a critical conversation about what divides this country. Backstage, Denzel adjusted his jacket calmly. His team had warned him, this won't be friendly fire. But that's exactly why he agreed to it. As the cameras rolled, Carlson opened with a smirk, "Tonight, Hollywood meets the heartland." Then he invited Denzel on stage. The applause was polite, but uncertain. Was this a debate? An ambush? Or something else entirely? Denzel entered with quiet confidence, no entourage, no sunglasses, no dramatics. Just a calm, focused gaze. He offered a respectful nod to Carlson and sat opposite him. The two men couldn't have embodied more contrasting energies. One, the provocateur, the other, the philosopher. Tucker leaned forward. "You've played soldiers, rebels, cops, but tonight, Mr. Washington, you're playing yourself. Let's see how that goes." Denzel smiled faintly. "I've never had to play myself, Tucker. I just show up." The audience chuckled nervously. Carlson shifted in his seat, momentarily off balance. "Fair enough," he replied. "Let's talk America. Are we as divided as people say?" Denzel didn't flinch. "We're not just divided, Tucker. We're addicted, to outrage, to conflict, to labels. And sometimes, the people profiting most from that division, are sitting right here." A quiet murmur rippled through the audience. Carlson raised an eyebrow. "So I'm the villain now?" "You said it," Denzel replied. "Not me." The tension was thick, but the audience was locked in. This wasn't just an interview, it was a collision. Carlson forced a laugh. "All right, let's get into it then." But what came next would stop the show cold. Tucker Carlson leaned in, that signature blend of amusement and skepticism curling across his face. "Denzel," he said, dragging the name with a rehearsed familiarity, "you speak like you're above it all. Like you're some neutral observer. But let's be honest, you're a Hollywood insider, a millionaire actor, a product of the very elite machine that mocks real Americans every day." Denzel didn't blink. His hands rested calmly on the desk, fingers interlocked. His voice didn't rise, if anything, it softened. "I grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. My father was a Pentecostal minister, my mother a beauty salon owner. I swept floors, I washed dishes. You talk like you know real Americans, Tucker. I lived with them." The crowd was still. Tucker smiled tightly. "Come on, Denzel. You don't think the industry hands you lines that sound righteous but sell movies? What you just said, it's good TV. You're good TV." Denzel tilted his head. "So are you. But at least I'm not pretending this is journalism." A faint gasp. Carlson's jaw flexed. "You're saying I'm not real?" "I'm saying performance wears a lot of masks," Denzel replied. "Yours just happens to wear a flag." That was when Carlson went in for the first real jab. "So what now?" Tucker asked. "You're gonna lecture us about morality? From your $50 million mansion in Beverly Hills? Please. You play victims in films, don't act like one in real life." It was meant to corner him. But Denzel's response was quieter than anyone expected, and infinitely more powerful. "I'm not playing the victim, Tucker," he said. "I'm just not playing dumb." A pause. Audible. Felt in the room like a pressure shift. Then Denzel leaned forward slightly, eyes locked. You invited me here to be a punching bag. But I didn't come to fight. I came to ask why truth sounds like an insult on your show. That single sentence froze everything. Even Carlson, momentarily, had no retort. The camera cut to the audience, heads tilted, brows furrowed, phones rising silently. Not for entertainment, this felt historic. And Carlson knew it. He'd underestimated him. Now the ground beneath him was shifting. Tucker Carlson tapped his pen against the desk, once, then twice, his grin faltering just slightly. Denzel's words had landed like a slow earthquake, no theatrics, just tectonic weight. Well, Tucker began, voice laced with that familiar smugness, you seem to have a problem with this show. You came into this studio knowing who I am, what I stand for, and how I speak. So why show up? Denzel leaned back. Because conversations aren't supposed to be safe, he replied calmly. They're supposed to be real. You can't claim to represent the American voice if you silence half of it. Tucker's brow lifted. Silence? You're sitting here, on national television, speaking freely. That's not suppression. That's spotlight. Denzel nodded. Sure. But let's talk about who gets the spotlight and why. Because when someone speaks truth in a way that doesn't flatter the narrative here, they're called ungrateful. Or worse, accused of playing victim. The crowd rustled. The tension wasn't just between the two men anymore, it was in the air, thick and unblinking. Tucker chuckled, but it was hollow. So now I'm the villain? You said it. Not me, Denzel replied. He turned slightly toward the camera, not for show, but for America. I'm not here to tear Tucker down. I'm here to remind people watching that disagreement isn't treason. And that respect doesn't mean silence. Carlson adjusted his tie, eyes flickering to the teleprompter as if it could save him. But no script had anticipated this. You think you're teaching me something? He asked, voice lowering. Denzel's answer was surgical. I think I'm reminding you of something you already knew, before this show became more theater than truth. Gasps. Not dramatic ones, just small intakes of breath from a live audience realizing they weren't just witnessing another viral moment, they were watching a man dismantle a stage with nothing but presence. Even the producers didn't cut to commercial. The control room knew, you don't interrupt an avalanche. Tucker's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to this. He was used to liberals fumbling, shouting, storming off. But Denzel wasn't playing by those rules. He wasn't even playing. I have to ask, Tucker said, folding his hands, his tone sharp now. If America is as broken as you're implying, why do you stay? Why not take your fame, your wealth, and go? Denzel blinked slowly. He wasn't rattled, he was focused. Because I love this country, he said. That's why I won't let it keep pretending. Tucker raised an eyebrow. Pretending about what, exactly? Denzel leaned forward slightly. Pretending that racism's just a chapter in a history book. Pretending that what you said earlier wasn't loaded with something deeper. Pretending that success erases the scars that got me here. There was a stillness in the studio now. Not quiet, listening. You said, go back to the zoo, Tucker, Denzel continued, his voice low but deliberate. And you think calling it a joke makes it disappear. But here's the thing about coded language, the ones it's aimed at, we hear it loud. Carlson tried to deflect. You're twisting. No, Denzel interrupted for the first time. I'm translating. Boom. That line didn't need volume. It needed silence to echo. I grew up hearing worse than that. From bus stops. From principals. From neighbors who smiled while saying it. But I didn't expect to hear it on live television in 2025. Tucker opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Denzel stood, still calm, still composed. I came here because I was told this would be a conversation. Turns out it was a mirror. You don't like what you see in it, that's not on me. And with that, he stepped aside, not stormed off, not exited in drama, but paused. Because America wasn't done watching. Phones everywhere. Clips already uploading. A tidal wave without music, without filters, just truth. Tucker stayed seated, motionless. Because there was nothing left to say, yet everything still hanging. The studio wasn't silent out of respect. It was silent out of disruption. No one expected a man like Denzel Washington to show up and dismantle an entire persona, not with rage, not with yelling, but with calm, undeniable reality. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled. One whispered into Tucker's earpiece, "Do you want to cut to break?" He didn't answer. He was still staring at the spot where Denzel had stood seconds ago. His fingers tapped the desk, restless. Offstage, Denzel hadn't left yet. He stood in a shadowed corner, adjusting his sleeves, speaking quietly with a staff member who looked both stunned and grateful. Back on camera, Tucker finally cleared his throat. "Well," he said with an uncomfortable chuckle, "that was dramatic." But even his usual armor of sarcasm had cracks. The audience wasn't laughing. Social media wasn't amused. This wasn't a culture war segment. This was a turning point. Comments started flooding in. That wasn't acting. That was truth. Tucker got dismantled without a single shout. Denzel just taught a masterclass on restraint with impact. Then came the real shift. Public figures, actors, senators, even retired generals, started reposting the clip. Hashtags exploded, #heard not hyped, #zoo comment, #Denzel truth. By the time Denzel exited the building, the internet was on fire. Outside, reporters waited. One asked, "Mr. Washington, are you going to sue?" He smiled slightly. "No. I'm not in the business of punishment. Just presence." He walked to a black SUV, the door held open by his assistant. But before getting in, he turned to face the cameras again. "Words matter," he said. Even when said with a smile. And then he was gone. Meanwhile, Tucker's team huddled in crisis mode. The clip was viral, the headlines were brutal. Even right-leaning columnists were cautious, unsure how to spin the moment. Because when a man like Denzel doesn't yell, he leaves no excuses. By the following morning, the clip had been watched over 31 million times. TikTok was looping Denzel's line, "I'm not in the business of punishment. Just presence." Twitter had turned it into a meme, but not mockery, reverence. Even Reddit, often chaotic and cynical, pinned the video to its politics front page with the headline, "When calm obliterates cruelty." Tucker Carlson, usually swift in reclaiming the narrative, had gone uncharacteristically silent. Not a tweet. Not a post-show follow-up. Fox PR issued a lukewarm statement about open dialogue and the importance of differing views. But it rang hollow. Because the world had already decided, this wasn't a debate. It was a reckoning. Back in Denzel's private home office, a quiet war room was forming. His publicist, Monica, sat across from him, eyes locked on a MacBook screen. "Every outlet wants a follow-up," she said. Colbert, Fallon, Anderson Cooper. Even Trevor Noah texted. "I'm not doing a tour," Denzel said, pouring himself tea. "I said what needed to be said." "But they're calling it the moment of the year," Monica argued. "Even some GOP senators are nodding to it." "Quietly, of course." Denzel sighed. "Exactly. Quietly. They only whisper when they feel guilt but don't want change." Meanwhile, an unexpected player entered the scene. Michelle Obama posted a single sentence on her Instagram story with the clip. "When dignity speaks, the noise stops." That screenshot alone was reposted 9 million times. Over at Tucker's studio, producers begged him to issue an explanation. Instead, he walked in late, tie loosened, jaw clenched. "Let them talk," he muttered. "America has a short memory." But this time, it didn't. Even rival anchors like Rachel Maddow praised Denzel's restraint. One conservative YouTube star admitted, "I don't agree with Denzel politically. But if that's not how you handle hate, I don't know what is." The dominoes were falling. And for once, Tucker couldn't stop the collapse. Inside a dim conference room at Fox headquarters, tension clung to the air like static. Producers sat with their laptops open, avoiding eye contact. Tucker Carlson stood by the window, arms crossed, his reflection warped in the glass. His senior producer, Marty Lang, finally broke the silence. "Damage control's not working." Tucker turned. "Because they're emotional." That moment went viral not because it was smart. It was soft. "Soft doesn't get 40 million views overnight," Marty said. Another producer chimed in. "He didn't even attack you. That's what makes it worse. You swung. He didn't." Tucker scoffed. "Don't start getting poetic on me, Paul. I'm not here to lose a ratings war to a sermon in a suit." But somewhere, deep down, he knew. The silence in his own comment sections, the lack of roaring support from his usual base, it was new. Unsettling. Meanwhile, Denzel had quietly returned to his schedule. No press tour, no interviews. Just a commitment he had made months ago, to visit 3 high schools across Georgia and speak with students about media literacy. In a packed gymnasium in Atlanta, he addressed a group of wide-eyed teenagers. "People will try to define you by what makes them comfortable," he said. "Don't let them. And don't scream to be heard. Say something worth remembering." Phones weren't just recording. They were trembling. Meanwhile, pressure on Fox's leadership intensified. Advertisers, always sensitive to bad optics, began pulling segments from Tucker's primetime slot. #BoycottHate trended for 3 days straight. Tucker's own staff began fielding resignation whispers. Backstage, one makeup artist texted her friend. "He picked the wrong one to poke. You can't rattle Denzel. He's too steady. That kind of calm. It exposes everything else." Denzel, meanwhile, sat on a school bus headed to the next stop, the Georgia skyline glowing behind him. He scrolled past tweets and headlines, unfazed. His voice wasn't loud. But it was still echoing. The next day, Tucker Carlson returned to his show with a noticeably restrained energy. The usual fire in his monologue had dimmed. His eyes darted slightly more than usual. His smile held too long, as if waiting for the approval that used to come so easily. He opened the segment carefully. "Let's address what everyone's talking about," he said. "The moment with Denzel Washington. Yes, it happened. Yes, it was emotional. But no, this isn't the end of the conversation." The screen behind him lit up with a paused frame of Denzel's calm face, mid-sentence. The caption below read, "Stillness or strategy?" But viewers weren't buying it. Thousands took to X, formerly Twitter, comparing Denzel's steady tone to Tucker's past clips, laughing mid-interview, mocking accents, tossing out inflammatory phrases with a grin. A supercut went viral. The contrast was brutal. Even longtime viewers said it. This felt different. Denzel wasn't performing. He was reflecting. Behind the scenes, Fox executives weren't debating if they'd respond, they were debating how much more they could lose before taking action. Meanwhile, Denzel received an invitation. Not from a talk show. Not from a campaign. But from an unlikely place, the National Civil Rights Museum. They wanted him to speak. He declined. Not out of pride, but out of clarity. He wasn't trying to become a movement. He was trying to hold a mirror. Still, he called one person, his mother. "They're trying to make it bigger than it is," he told her. His mother chuckled. "That's because truth travels quietly, baby. But once it arrives, you can't pretend it ain't home." Elsewhere, Tucker met with his PR team. "We flip this," he ordered. "I want a segment on unity. Book someone moderate. We frame this like I'm learning." His assistant looked confused. "Learning?" "Yes. We humanize me," Tucker barked. "You know what they say, if you can't beat the truth, rebrand it." But even he knew, some things can't be rebranded. Especially not stillness that speaks louder than shouting. 3 nights later, Denzel appeared on PBS NewsHour. No cheering audience. No flashy graphics. Just him, seated across from a soft-spoken anchor named Mariella Stone. The set was quiet. No interruptions, no reaction shots, just questions and space to answer. Mariella leaned forward. "Mr. Washington, the moment with Tucker Carlson, it's been labeled everything from an act of courage to a viral stunt. How do you define it?" Denzel took a breath. "I don't define it. Because if I do, I let others off the hook from thinking about what it meant to them." Mariella nodded. "Did it mean something to you?" He looked directly into the camera. "It reminded me that silence isn't the absence of conflict. Sometimes, it's the most powerful confrontation of all." Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson watched the interview alone, in his office, lights dimmed. He had seen the replays, the memes, the critiques, but this was different. Denzel wasn't gloating. He wasn't campaigning. He wasn't capitalizing. He was reflecting. And that's what stung the most. It wasn't the backlash. It was that Denzel hadn't needed to win. He had simply needed to stand. Tucker stared at the screen, expressionless, until one of his staffers knocked gently and entered. "Mr. Carlson, your ratings dropped last night. 16%. Twitter sentiments down too." Tucker didn't respond at first. Then, slowly, "They want him." "Sir?" "They don't want a show. They want sense." Back at the studio, Mariella wrapped up the interview. "One last question," she said. "Would you do it again?" Denzel smiled softly. "If standing quietly in the face of noise is now considered radical, then yes. Every time." When the segment ended, a producer whispered, "We haven't seen numbers like this since election night." The control room sat in silence. No applause. No shouting. Just the sound of truth lingering longer than expected. A week had passed since the confrontation on live television, but its resonance refused to die down. Across America, clips of the exchange were replayed on morning news, late-night shows, podcasts, even TikToks cut by teens who usually didn't care about politics. But this wasn't about politics anymore. It was about presence. And Denzel had redefined it. In a high school classroom in Detroit, a teacher paused the lesson to play the segment. "This," she told her students, "is what strength without volume looks like." In a church in Mississippi, a pastor quoted Denzel's words from the pulpit. "When you choose not to listen, you choose not to grow." In a boardroom in Atlanta, executives cited the moment as a case study in leadership under pressure. And in Washington, D.C., aides from both parties debated how the confrontation might shift upcoming narratives in the national election cycle. Not because Denzel was running, but because he reminded the public what it looked like when someone actually stood for something. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson remained quiet. He didn't release a statement, didn't tweet, didn't retaliate. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. No script, no teleprompter, no team of spin doctors could erase the image of him shouting, and Denzel simply standing. One night, Denzel returned to the same studio, this time alone, just to walk the empty set. A janitor recognized him, tipped his cap. You changed the air in here, Mr. Washington, he said. Denzel smiled, then stood in the same spot he had the night of the broadcast. He looked out into the vacant audience seats. I wasn't here to change the world, he whispered to no one in particular. Just to remind it what decency still sounds like. And with that, he turned, stepped off the platform, and walked into the silence. Leaving behind not a legacy of noise, but a blueprint for grace under fire. This wasn't about politics. It wasn't about race. It was about one man's voice standing still while the world screamed. Denzel didn't fight back with fists or fury, he used presence. And sometimes, that's all it takes. If this moment moved you, if it made you think, hit that subscribe button, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, not every response needs to be loud to be powerful. Stay strong. Stay clear. And stay human. God bless, and God bless America.